to go deep in well-written book summaries versus going deep in a book. And I've been thinking about that. I've been trying both, and I think I'm leaning towards the going deep in the actual book.
Yeah, I mean, you got to try it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Well, very well. I got that. I was proud. So now the question. So I have some thoughts about strategies. I think you're doing really good work. It looks like from the stats, you're doing really good work getting eyes on the posts. That post that you did yesterday, if I were you, I would break that into like 10 posts because there's so much there. And I would imagine that took you a lot of time. I think you're on mute right now.
Oh yeah, I muted my phone. Sorry. A good amount. I thought about what Tiago has written for that for a long time, and I'm just trying to incorporate that into the needs of a student, right? So yes, I definitely believe that each one of those principles deserve their own post. And I don't know if you got a chance to quickly take a look at the computer science blog. It's in our agenda actually.
Oh, awesome. I'm on the agenda now. So,
I think it should be linked. What's up, Steve?
what up, Steve?
1 second.
You don't look like yourself today. Ha ha ha, Anderson. Real funny.
Oh, hey guys.
What's up, Steve?
Hey, man.
Oh. Cool.
You still recovering from your week-long trip?
I'm past that.
Steve, so we're just both pulling up the agenda right now. I think you're already on it, or I saw you earlier.
Is the computer science one titled "Study to Study or Not to Study"?
Yeah, that one.
Awesome.
So in here, I made one call out on how I'm channeling loaned innovation by doing some research outside of the scope of what my teacher has pointed me to and my teacher's lecture notes, because they're a little bit hard and to understand, like the teacher's resources. So I think doing external research to then be able to understand what your teacher is saying is that practice, right? Is a practice for that principle. So yes.
Awesome. I hadn't looked at this yet, but I will. One thing that we can do. That's cool. We as a team have not yet not yet talked about writing and editing. Okay. Oh. I've got a new chip. And one of the things that I think as we get deeper into this, I would look forward to those conversations. Before we start with that, though, looked like should we go to the agenda and just work from the top down?
Sure. Catch up time. Steve, do you want to go first?
Sure. I've been looking into a lot of. Wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been looking a lot into the programs at UC Davis, and just I'm like kind of amazed. I'm like, whoa, like if I was a student 3-4 years ago, like I wouldn't ever thought to do this. So I'm trying to come up with a game plan of what things I'm going to tackle and in what years I'm going to tackle them, just paying attention to the deadlines. But it's a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot to try to get. And also just I've been looking at a lot of this is, I guess, more for my own, because I don't know enough about what math research is like, but I see a lot of the things like McNair's help with like research, and so do like these other programs at Davis. But all the examples of research I've seen are all in like biology or chemistry. And I don't know if it's necessarily more easy to study or maybe more accessible like in a lab, but I have no idea what like math research would entail, and I haven't seen any examples of it. So I'm like, would this even apply to me? So I have to think of that. And I've been trying to look about some of that stuff online, and lots of people just kind of wait for research in their graduate careers or maybe really late in their senior years if they're like super advanced. So I'm like, I got all these things to think about and try to figure out and ask all these questions. So I got some time this quarter though, so hopefully I can get those things figured out. And
wouldn't it be really cool if you knew someone in your immediate network that did math research and currently does it? Wouldn't that be amazing?
yes.
I mean, who do you think? Henry, any ideas on where we can go?
Not me. It's not me, Steve. I'm not doing that yet.
Yeah.
I would love, I mean, Steve, I have so much to say about this topic.
Okay. I just gotta maybe
Do I
like,
scare you?
huh?
Do I scare you?
Well, I don't know. And like, I know at least I'm probably not. I know like you like since the beginning of your college, you like started off, you're like a top gun, like you're that guy to aim for. And like me, I'm slowly working my way up there, but I don't want it to be too late.
I'm not a top gun. I mean, I work the system, but I would say that I wish I was you, Steve. Like you have a really thoughtful and I think when you finish your undergraduate degree, you're going to have like 5 years on me when I finished, right? Like, I'm not talking about physical age. I'm talking about maturity and understanding. You will, at the end of your undergraduate degree, you probably will have more knowledge about yourself and your career than I had by the time of my third year of graduate school.
No.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Okay.
Steve,
maybe I think that Henry, do you want to be involved in that type of conversation, or is that something that Steve and I should do one-on-one?
Sure, I'd love to be involved. I think you have some thoughts for us on how we can engage in some STEM research, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know as much about the CS approach, and in fact, I have very little to say about current state-of-the-art approaches for graduate school and CS. But in terms of like undergraduate research and questions to ask and things that you can do, and then what is math research? How does it work? What do you even do? How do you get involved? Like, I have so much to say about that. Yeah. So
I had one more question, I guess, type comment. Just because I know that your philosophy on like scholarships is like, instead of like going thin and like trying to get a lot of them, you like to really focus and like on one. And so I have
yeah, but this is where I would have Henry come in.
Oh, okay. Well, I have like there's 4 programs.
Are those at the end of your notes? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So there's 4 programs, and one of them's the McNairs, but I'm gonna put that one off till senior year because I don't qualify for it yet economically. But I will in 1 year. But then there's 3 other programs, and they kind of overlap on like kind of that bridge to the graduate school type thing. And I know that there's one actually, I think this is helpful because it's specifically for like math and like physical science students, but like it makes sure to include math. So I feel like that kind of like alleviates some of my worries. Whereas like the other ones I've seen are mostly biology. So like, even though they're all research based, like would it be better to try to get into 3 programs or just try to get into like 1, or I don't know. Yeah. So that's something to think about that I'm just putting out there.
Do you have what program, what operating system do you use on your computer?
I use PC. I mean, just Windows.
How hard is it to get? Do you have a printer at home?
Yes.
How hard is it to get a month-by-month calendar printed for the next 4 years?
I think I have it actually. I think I already have it printed.
Oh, you do?
Although actually that might be in the storage or something, but I can get it printed. I've had it printed in the past.
Can you get it in a space that's close to where you work?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you have small Post-it notes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this goes back to this is the scheduling document. One of the things that before I answer the question, or before you answer the question, how many should you do? What I would do is I would get the next 4 years printed. I like to do it personally by quarter. So
Actually,
the
I
one that
remember I made one with you in your office in the past.
awesome. So do you still have that?
It might be in my storage, but
Where is that?
it's in my backyard and it's super tucked away and sealed. Kind of.
How many minutes would it take you to get it?
Well, I'd have to look around through, so I don't. It's kind of a mess right now, so
Okay.
yeah.
Can you get it before next week?
Yeah, I can see if I still have it.
Okay. So the thing that it's awesome that you did this. Before I say anything, let me shut up because Henry, I want you to counter. So he knows that my style is to do one at a time, Henry. And I want you to tell him why that's a bullshit strategy and what a better way to do it is.
One at a time in terms of quarter and quarter at a time, Jeff?
That's what I do, right? I do one scholarship per quarter, right? Or what I used to. I don't do it anymore, right? But why is that bullshit and what's a better way to do it?
I think in the beginning, Steve, if you haven't been awarded a scholarship for like your writing or your academic merits before, what I did was apply to multiple because I wasn't sure if I was going to get any. So that's one reason. Another is so much of the scholarship writing is transferable. So personal statement, like I just worked with Balaram for 2 hours the other day because he's ramping up to write his personal statement for graduate schools. So so much of that writing, what I learned from Jeff, one of the most amazing things I learned from Jeff in personal statement regards is every minute that we spend drafting our personal statements will be can be a win-win if we think about that time that we spend thinking and writing about our future as like in a holistic view, right? Not what the end goal of let's get this money or let's get into this program, but rather what is it that I want out of my life? What is it that I've done? And what is it that I still have yet to do? So if we can do that, my suggestion to you is to apply to multiple, right? Without losing focus. I mean, I would still prioritize it. Like this year around, I can share with you the list once I find it, but it was an Excel sheet and I have deadlines, very clear deadlines. I have priorities, like which scholarships I want the most. Ironically, the first scholarship that got back to me this academic year was a scholarship that I almost did not apply for, the San Jose Women's Club. And the only reason I knew them was Braven had an event that used their venue, which is right off campus, like a storytelling event. So I met one of the directors there and I was like, okay, I'll just apply, even though I had no idea that, I would even fit a women's club scholarship. But that was the first one that got back to me this year. And I was awarded for that one, right?
Henry, I think you have that list of all the scholarships that you've gotten. That's awesome. And then Steve, that document that you put together, that would be a perfect little video or blog post or both. Like, what did you do and why did you do it? Right. Okay. And then Henry, what you just said would also be a really nice one. When you guys, as you develop your deep work systems, Henry, the reason that I went for one per quarter was because of the deep work systems, right? But I also think Henry's workflow, like I would trust Henry over me, Steve, on this particular one, right? Like I have my systems and I do it a certain way, but I think, watching Henry work, I would definitely, listen to what he says about how he does it and then just try it that way. The way that I do it is the same way I do all the other stuff, which is super deep, and that's powerful and it worked for me and it allowed me to stay focused. But in terms of like getting your feet wet, go for it. My attitude was generally, I wanted straight A's in my classes. And I wanted that guaranteed. right? And so like for me, I just didn't have the amount of energy that it took to get the straight A's, and to guarantee that I didn't have the bandwidth to track multiple different scholarship applications at the same time and sleep well at night. Oh yeah, I also wanted to do like 2 hours of working out every day. And so I just like, to balance all three of those things during a quarter for me was impossible, right? So that rule that I had about no more than one per quarter was designed to allow me to go maximally hard on the studying, get a solid run every single day, and then also upper body workout, and then in my quote unquote free time, the scholarship, because I was only doing one, I really could go deep, and I could like focus on that scholarship, and I didn't have to worry about balancing so many other pieces of it. And the other thing was I did those scholarships as a graduate student. And so I was competing against other graduate students who take the top, it's a different competition. All the people in graduate school do what you guys are doing in undergrad. So it's not as easy to just like blanket statement, because there's a bunch of people applying for that money because they all know that it's there, right?
Yeah.
There is one note of the ethics side of things. So if you feel like you can get a bunch, right, then you can definitely focus in on ones that you think are best suited towards you and your achievements and what you want to do. For example, this summer, Tech Core, I actually actively chose Tech Core over this Google internship. I was accepted to the Google internship, but at the same time, either Rom or I think Catherine Lee was putting me in contact with Constantine. Constantine does remember you, by the way. Remember that meeting that we had before I had to meet him and then you had to go to your appointment? He's like, yeah, I remember Steve. So I actively chose TechCore over Google, right? And there was a financial cut there, but as far as my larger goal, I gained something that was really, really priceless, right?
That's so awesome. Fuck Google. That's so cool. One thing so Steve, action item, like if we were to, here's the action item that I would want to see before. I wouldn't make a decision on that right now, which it doesn't sound like you're ready to do that anyways. But what I would do is I would get that calendar out. I would have 4 years. To be honest with you, Steve, I would probably do you have a sense of if you want your undergraduate at Davis to go 2 or 3 years?
Probably 3 years.
Awesome.
Just this year has kind of been hijacked by Corona, so it's kind of
okay. So what do you know the target end graduation date?
Yeah, so it would be June 2023.
Awesome. Okay, so get those 3 years. If I were you, I would organize them by quarter. So the way I always do this is I staple those three. Each quarter is a little pack of stuff, and I would have all quarters. So I think that's going to be 12 quarters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have all those 12 quarters. Do you know how long you want to do in your PhD process?
Minimum. I'm not sure about that yet.
Okay.
Or I don't know. As long as it takes, it's good. So
let's put a goal of 5 with an optional flexibility of 6.
Okay.
Right, and we'll talk more about that. So I would also, you might not print all of those out. I to be honest with you, I think right now my calendars go through 2025. When I was in a PhD this is a major project of yours, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a filing cabinet?
No.
Okay, we got to get you one. I might have an extra one. Otherwise,
yeah, I'm actually going through the process. Like I'm gonna get rid of some furniture and change stuff. So since I'm gonna be here this quarter, I'm gonna turn my room into an office type-ish thing. Because right now I have like a bed that takes up like 90% of my entire room. But it wasn't my choice to bring it in here. That's why I was gone. But yeah.
Um, what this project, this thing that we're talking about right now, you remember we've talked a lot about this, being able to think on different time scales. Both of you guys, we'll talk a lot about this, and the practices that I'm going to share with you, you don't have to be dedicated to them particularly, but there's a bunch of principles behind those practices that are useful. And in the absence of your own approach, your own reasons and your own approach, my statement is always steal somebody else's that works and then see why it doesn't work for you and then finagle it, right? But what I would do, like action item, get that calendar, get the next 8 to 9 years printed, organized by quarter. The 3 years that you're going to finish UC Davis, I might organize by quarter, and then the other ones. So like, here's an example of what I do with the other ones. So this is the entire thing. Right now, I'm always in the quarter system. So these are done through, like, all the quarters are waiting for me for next year. And then I have another space where just one slip has the entire year. So if I was in your case, I would get this year, next year, and the year after printed out, organized by quarter. Maybe you already have that. And then the next 6 years, I would just put those calendars together with a little clip, because you're not, do you know right now if you're going to go to a PhD program that's on semesters or quarters?
No.
Yeah, so you're not sure about that yet, but I would definitely have the those 12-month increments printed so that you can put stuff on them.
Okay.
Okay, and then the next, so say that back to me. What are the action items there?
So get my calendar marked out for the next 8-9 years, and the next for the undergraduate years, 3 years. Let's have it quarter based, and then after that, maybe like monthly based, or yeah.
Yeah, and then just group the months by year, and you could either do that via academic year or you could do it via calendar year. Yep. Academic years usually start in July and end in June. Most students think they start in September or August and end in June, depending, but the summers are always time to leverage, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's action item 1. Action item 2, get a little Post-it note, and for the, this is where I would zoom out a little bit. I don't even know if I have this, to be honest with you. Do you have the quarter by quarter? It's actually on our, on the Conquering College website. Do you have this thing? Let's see. Conquer College.
Jeff, did you purposely not upload the personal statement document that you've put together on your website?
No, I don't even think that was not on purpose.
I see.
Should I upload it?
And when I was helping Balaram, I created some resources for him, but I think to have yours to be able to compare for future mentorship would be nice. So
do you see this one, the 50-year template there?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to do quarter system or semester system. I might for now do quarters, because you can, even if you're not in a quarter system, you can still think about the year broken into quarters, right?
Yeah.
So the reason that this is really nice is that you can, so I would download that, print it out for the next, it's a little bit interesting because the first few are already passed. But I would, maybe we're now summer or fall 2020, I would print it out until the end of that 9 years. And then on this thing is where I would put the little Post-it notes associated with due dates on all of the scholarships that you just said. So, and included on those Post-it notes, I would put like my desired graduation date, transfer date, end of PhD program, all in Post-it notes, right? Because the idea is the Post-it notes, you take it off and move it, and it's that easy, right? Mm-hmm. But like, before you make a commitment on when you're going to do this, just where's the list of, here it is, right? So like, the nice thing is these things all have due dates, right?
Yeah.
If it has a specific due date, it's up to you whether or not you're going to apply on your calendar or keep it on the larger horizon of focus of your 10-year plan. If you were going to apply for any of these in the next year, I would put it on your calendar. on your actual calendar, right? If you were going to apply for them maybe 2 years from now, I would put a Post-it note around that time on your 10-year plan. And then maybe a second Post-it note on maybe the week or on your calendar so that it's a reminder. So you can say like, oh, okay, here's the 10-year plan and it moves back this way, right? All right, so say that back. What's the second action item there?
But so put the dates for the scholarship deadlines in the calendar of like when it's due. And then I don't know, the second item was for like putting another Post-it, but or I don't know, Post-it, but just actually marking it in your more day-to-day calendar if it's within the next year.
If you actually, if so, I call projects that I'm currently working on. I don't know, Henry, we have this conversation. Have we talked about active, someday maybe, and inactive?
Briefly, yeah.
Steve, have we talked about that?
No.
So the short version of this is, in order to manage multiple timescales at the same time, I have to be able to see backwards, right now, and forwards, right? I like to think about the work that I'm doing on a daily basis as my active projects. So if I'm going to finish a project in the next year with a concrete deadline, those are called, I call those for myself active projects. And it actually is non-trivial for me to activate a project. I have a whole for me to like say, I'm going to do this project takes me, somebody recently asked me to do a project and I was like, yeah, in 2023, I would be interested in talking about activating that project. Because from now until then, I already have a queue of projects happening, right? And the projects that are doing now, many of them came from many, many years ago. And so anytime I would recommend to you, Steve, if you're going to activate the project, if you have a specific goal for a deadline for a scholarship that you're going to activate within the next year, I would categorize that as active, and I would put it on my calendar as something that I'm committing to with my blood. That doesn't mean I'm going to get it, but it means that part of my bandwidth this year is dedicated to that. Anything that is not an active project, my claim is I don't want to schedule it. So if I'm going to do what I call a someday maybe project, that's from Getting Things Done. Someday maybe is anywhere between a year and 10 years out. Actually, it's between a year and 30 years out in my case, because I'm thinking about retiring when I'm 65 to 75, right? But like those projects, I don't need to know. All I need to know is when is the due date likely to be? And then I need to be able to remember that as I get closer to that. So if I'm going to activate 2 scholarships in the next year and those have concrete deadlines, I'm going to schedule those on my calendar and then I'm going to start doing daily work on those projects. But if I have a scholarship that's like 2 or 3 years out, I don't need, in fact, it's stupid for me to put that on my month-to-month calendar because I don't know what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years, right? And it's not like I'm doing work on those right now. All I need to know is, hey, 3 years from now in spring, there's an opportunity that I want to be aware of. So I schedule that. And then multiple times each quarter, I look at that thing as a reminder, like, oh, okay, there it is. And then as the quarters go by, the years go by, I now have that target in mind. And at some point, I'm going to move that folder from my someday maybe folder into my active folder. So in my office right now, I just did this today. This is full. This entire thing here is full with someday maybe. And then right over here, I have 4 different types of active projects. Right here, there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, each of which is a different type, right? So those are all things that I'm working on a day-to-day basis. So if I was doing a scholarship, that's in there, right? That grant, that NSF grant, that's all NSF. That's one grant, right? When I'm done with that grant, no matter, my claim is I'm going to go for as many times. If I fail 4 times, then I'll stop applying for it. But until that point, I'm going to apply as many times as I can, right? As soon as I'm done with that, put it in a box, put it in the storage unit. go into that someday maybe, activate the next one, right? And activating literally means I take it out and I put it in there. And what's funny about that is between now, when I'm working on the NSF grant and the time that I do my next grant, I continue to collect resources that are helpful for the someday maybe, but I just schedule them away, right?
Yeah.
None of that is scheduled. Not a single bit of that is scheduled. It's on my 50-year plan. But like, for example, I was supposed to submit the NSF grant August 2nd, but I skipped that because my wife and I decided that we can't live in an apartment anymore. So I bought a house. So you know what I did on my little 50-year plan? I took the NSF grant and I moved it from August to February. And then I pushed the next grant that I'd been looking at from a few years, like 2 or 3 years down the line. And I just moved it on that calendar. So what'd you hear, Steve?
There's the active and then the someday maybe. I shouldn't really be worried about the someday maybes because I can always push those back. So they shouldn't be taken away from the active projects that I'm working on. But I should have them scheduled sometime in the distant future.
Have the ability to remember that you want to do them, right? But not like the way that I always think about, if I put a date and a time on a due date, that's as if I've cut my finger open and signed in blood, right?
Yeah.
You ever have that where you commit to something and then you don't do it and then you feel like a failure because you've committed to that deadline?
Yeah.
That's an emotional reaction. So like the way to avoid that feeling of failure in my case is I'm very, very hesitant to put something on a calendar with a due date unless I'm sure that I'm going to hit that due date. For everything else, the point is not to schedule it. The point is to be cognizant that it's coming and to collect as much information before I activate it. Because the point, you ever have this, like you have something that you want to do, but you're not committed to it yet, but you see information, you pass by information that you would find useful later. This is Tiago he coins a word for it, but it's the same shit, right? The second brain, right? And so by having it in the future, you remember, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. You have a support network, a second brain to capture that information, but you're not psychologically committed to that specific deadline, so that if you miss it, you don't feel like a failure, right?
Jeff, in this book, Pay to Think, that's the same concept, but they coined it enterprise thinking.
Of course they did. And then they sell the book and they're like, oh yeah, if you just read our book, right? Which is what we'll do.
This was helpful, this dialogue, because those 4 active drawers that you have, Jeff, each one should be my 4 CS courses.
Yeah, fucking classes. Yeah, the classes are brutal, right? Because you like how would you do that? Talk me through how you do that.
I haven't really done it well, but I am recognizing if I don't stay on top of 4 STEM courses, I'm just going to get eaten alive. So what I'm doing.
No, go ahead.
No, go. You know.
I probably in classes are nice because they are closed loops, right? Like your teacher gives you confines, and you're not supposed to go outside those confines, right? And that's what's really nice about classes is like they're doable. Like right? Like you can finish them, right? And so for me, like the reason that I keep those open, like one of those is titled Ytube Projects. And Ytube projects, like the learning code, I wouldn't call a Ytube project, but it's in that particular vein. It's really a mechanism to get support out. The Ytube project is a bad name for that category, but they compare this level of complexity with a class. So the reason that I say that's important is like, I would never use a binder for that information because it's not closed. Like binders are nice because they allow you to do sequential information really, really well. And it's a mobile version of being able to get that thing. So if I was doing for a class, I would actually have probably for each of those classes, I would have 2 pretty large binders. And then the active folder would be the stuff that I hadn't finished yet. So the one category of projects that I haven't talked about yet are what I call inactive projects. And inactive projects in teaching are super useful. When I, like right now, Engineering 11 is about to go from inactive to active. Because the last time I taught Engineering 11 was in winter 2020. I haven't touched it since then, but I'm about to do a huge YouTube build on it, right? So now I'm going to reactivate that project. And so I take all of those things out of an inactive stuff. And the inactive stuff usually doesn't sit, like the way that I'm doing it is the inactive stuff sits in a different space in my house, because otherwise, literally, like the number of pieces of paper in this office would be larger than the square footage of the office, right? And so like for a class, my feeling is always like, you guys are probably doing, you're probably doing multiple projects at the same time in your class, right? You've got your lecture recaps, you have your assignments, you have your tests, you have your kind of your different levels of tests, right? Midterm exam, quizzes, midterm exams, and finals. But once you finish a lecture, once you've gotten the first draft of a lecture or the second draft of a lecture notes written, you're not actively working on that on a daily basis, right? That's now a reference document, no? So the moment that it's a reference document, in my opinion, I would take it out of the active project folder and I would file it in my class binder, right? Because now what happens is every time I want to reference that thing, I'm going to the class binder, and then I clear the clutter of my active projects. Like on a daily basis, I can't do more than like 2 or maybe if I'm lucky 3 really good work on an active project. So if I have like 15 active projects, like I'm overcommitted, right? And so if I'm storing all of my class stuff in my active projects things, like emotionally, I'm going to be overwhelmed there. But if like there's this really nice sense of accomplishment. Could you imagine if you have like lecture 4, lecture 5, lecture 6, and then you finish lecture 4 and you clear it from your active project, put it in your binder in reverse chronological order. So now that's done. And then you immediately move on to the next one, right? And for every one of your lectures, assignments, and tests, I would have a different folder in my active project thing. So that as I, like, okay, this few hours of work, I'm going to do that particular thing. So I go out and take it, work on it. If I get to a place where I think it's good, file it in my binder. And then at the end of the class, that's where I would have like a separate space in my house or in a different filing cabinet for like all the resources that I had for that class go into one space. Like that right here. Sadly, I didn't have this type of guidance when I was an undergrad. And so that story that I threw it away. But like, if you needed any resources from any of my grad school classes from the second year of grad school onward, they're right there. Like I literally took those binders, took them out, put them in a folder. Now I have those binders are now relevant for the next quarter because I'm not going to buy like 50,000 fucking binders as an undergraduate, right? And then anytime I need to know that class, like let's say, Steve, right now you're like, hey, Jeff, could you get your exam 2 from Math 133 the second year? Fuck yeah, I can. It's right there.
Yes.
Right? And that's, it's kind of funny. Yeah, and that's where like one of the things that's crazy about that is all of a sudden imagine that every time you're doing a class, you're not doing that class just for the class, but you're actually creating your own notes to be able to reference anytime you want. And for you guys as teachers, imagine you can reference those notes when you're making your lecture notes teaching that class. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where, and then, later when you guys get into that, you guys will see that the binder system. So like, strictly speaking, I have probably like 70 binders. You'll see, I'm going to make shelves up there so I can put them on there, but that's because I'm like as a student, once you clear a class, you're not going to return to that class again next quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as a teacher, every time I teach the class, I like return to it. And so some of the lecture notes and stuff like that, like I can't, That's where I just, when inactive, I take the stuff out of the project folders, put them in the binders, put them in chronological order so I can get them. And then I just put the binder somewhere I can get to them when I need them. Right. What do you think of that statement? So let me ask you this. What, too much, not enough? Shut up, Jeff. Keep talking.
For me, like I've made the same mistakes of throwing away things just so I can reuse the binder, and then not having a filing cabinet to put all my previous notes into. So right now I've just been buying binders, and I have like a box in my storage just full of like all my old notes and just old binders. But I think it would be good if I invested in a filing cabinet, because it takes up a lot of space.
Yes, so those things are you have to figure out, like, how does, like, that's a legit problem, right? Like, how do you manage the space? My brother's answer to this question is he scans everything and then he just recycles the paper. But I don't, that for me, that's not easy to do. Like, I can't, yeah, each of us have our own thing. This is where I want to be younger and cooler. I can't do it. I can't, like, yeah. So that problem that you just had, like, how do you deal with the space? One way to do that is to get us, my brother has this Fujitsu, I forget, I could get the name of it. He likes it a lot. We have one on campus, like $700 scanner. And you put it in the scanner and immediately gets a PDF. And so what he does is he just creates PDF scanned documents, scans them in, has it online, and then all of the hard copies disappear. Now, of course, if that's the system that you were to settle on, two things would need to happen immediately, right? One thing is he would need a very, very good computer hierarchy where he knows where to schedule stuff. And then number two, you'd need like at least one, probably two different external hard drives, one of the external hard drives for home, and then another one for either like a security deposit or a family member's home that you trust. And then like once or twice a year, go to that person's house, grab the external hard drive, come home, update it so that all that stuff isn't lost, so that if your house burns down, you still have access to all that material, right? Or you could do the thing where you pay a monthly fee to Dropbox to like back up your appointment, right? Mm-hmm. But those, like, fixing those problems now, Steve, the more time you think about like those systems, the easier it is on your back end. And I literally think about this as an investment. So when I in grad school, I was making taking home around $1,400 to $1,500 a month, 9 months a year. That's not a lot of money to support one, to pay rent. Like my rent was $400, food was like $400. So like, it's not a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But like at one point, I think I spent like $3,000, which is like, I don't know, like 25% of my yearly income on desks, on like bookshelves, like those two bookshelves I bought. And I remember people making fun of me, like, why you don't spend money on anything? You eat beans and rice at night. You fucking use your shoes until they have holes in them. Why are you spending money on this stuff? And the way that I said it to myself was, I'm a professional thinker, right? Okay, so when you look at a professional athlete, what do you notice that they have when they're on their field or the court or whatever? Look at their body. Are they naked? What do they have?
Proper gear.
Yeah, a nice fucking gear too, right?
Yeah. Like
they probably have like 4 or 5 different pairs of shoes. They got like tennis rackets. They got 9 of them, plus extra ones in the background, like, because the gear is the stuff that they use to actually fucking do their work, right? And so the thing that I challenge myself for, and this is where the scholarship come in, get your first scholarship or whatever, like, don't pay for it out of pocket. Go Spartan. So the first thing that I did is I bought this cheap ass foldable desk that was nice. It was probably like $89. I still have it.
That's what I have.
Yeah, right. And then I started pegging the type of gear that I wanted, and I found some stuff that was nice but cheap. And then I went and got money to earn that. So now the thing that I always like to do for scholarship stuff is at least 50% of the scholarship goes into my bank. So in your case, maybe that goes to pay off loans, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other 50% is stuff that I earn. So then I go, the first thing on my list, I go get it. The second thing on my list, to go get it. And then when I run out of money, I'm like, well, fuck, I'm out of money. what am I going to do, right? Yeah. So go get the next scholarship. And then eventually over years, you build up all that stuff, your gear. And then, that's where you can leverage it. Every penny that you spend on office equipment is a penny that you would expect return on, right? So it's not only are you not paying it out of pocket or out of labor money, you're paying it out of scholarship money. But then the thing that I always say is if I spend $1,000 on gear, I expect $2,000 back.
Or 2,000 minutes back.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think in the early stages before, so like right now, one of the things that I do in my YouTube, like at this point in my life, I have enough to pay my bills on my income. And so I think Henry is hungrier than I am. Like, and I love being around that. It's such a good influence for me because I'm like a fucking tanker, right? Like if it was up to me, like, but like on that feeling, like I do a bunch of investment now that I don't expect to pay off for the next 10 or 15 years. And I don't really care. Like and it's one of the reasons I love hanging out with you, Henry, because you're always like, okay, that's nice, but like shit together, man.
I just spend a lot of time on YouTube, and what I witnessed there, whether it's lifestyle videos or vlogging, I'm just like, if we can get that following, but with a centerpiece of helping students do well in their courses, we should get that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so here's what I'm gonna say. You're a professional thinker now. Like, can you say that about yourself? Both of you guys. I'm a professional thinker.
I'm a professional thinker.
Yeah. Let me hear it, Henry.
I'm a professional thinker.
Okay. So if you're a professional thinker, what do professionals do when they need to do their work? What do they get? The best gear they can afford, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, and that's a lifelong process, right? You know the difference between a man and a boy is?
Experience.
The cost of their toys.
Oh.
These are toys. All of this stuff is toys, right? All right, I'll shut up on that. But you're noticing, like, check that out. We were talking about scheduling scholarships, and where did we get to?
System management, kind of, for the future and in the past.
Horizons of focus, right?
Yeah.
And what you're noting, this conversation came up because some of your systems to allow you to go to higher horizons of focus don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you're trying to answer the question, like, how do I schedule the scholarships? But until you get the system set up to allow you to, or as Tiago would say, the second brain systems, right?
Yeah.
Like until those systems are set up, it's really hard to offload that stuff out of your mind while recognizing, like, I won't lose this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Should I shut up now?
That point resonates because that's, I mean, exactly the struggle of every class. Directly relevant to everything that we're supposed to do as students in our courses. That I introduced it with that CS blog post that I uploaded, which is if you ask any average student on what they do to study, besides them responding to read, do homework, and look at lecture notes, they're at a loss, right? So going deep into organization or horizons of focus is directly, is it acute to academic success in our courses?
Semi-parallel. Yeah, and Steve, like, let's start with a statement that document that you made was freaking awesome.
Yeah,
right? And it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll transition to Henry in a sec, and then so next week, what are you bringing? Steve.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have my calendar ready for the next 8-9 years, specifically the next 3. I want to have the scholarship deadlines, and maybe, well, I think that all we decided, but I'd like to kind of have a sort out what's going to be active and my someday maybes. So have that sorted out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that I will recommend, yeah, so let's stay there. I was going to say, do you know what Nextdoor is?
The neighborhood app, Steve,
The
or a
reason that
website.
I have seen free, so these filing cabinets were about 150 each.
Okay.
The one that I just bought online, so those are cheap. I've seen filing cabinets that look identical to this that are $600. I just bought one for $130 from a teacher that was brand new, that if I had bought it brand new, it would have been like $500.
Yeah.
On Nextdoor, I have seen, the reason that Nextdoor is really nice is because it's in your local community. So like I'm part of the Mirabu Park next door. You probably will be that too.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any in this area in this time, but in Redwood City when I was living there were some people that would be moving and would just put a filing cabinet outdoor and put it on Nextdoor. And every time I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's like $150 out of pocket or $600 new. And so if I know that I want that and I check Nextdoor, and another thing you can do is you can post on Nextdoor, hey, I'm looking for a filing cabinet and you want to get rid of it. And some people just would be like, if you take this out of my house, you can have it. Like just,
it's kind of like a Craigslist type thing.
Yeah, except that it's designed just for, and maybe Henry has a faster way to say it than I do.
Just more local, I guess.
For your local community.
It's also a lot more user friendly than Craigslist, Steve.
Okay.
So just check it out.
I've used Craigslist for everything, so.
It's like a mix between Facebook and Craigslist.
Oh, it's like the Facebook Marketplace type thing, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except it's not Facebook. Fuck Facebook.
On your information.
They probably bought it. They're like, actually, fuck you.
I loved what Scott Galloway said about those people. Jeff, was it wiping Neosporin on their guilt and smearing Vaseline on their lens of equity?
Awesome. All right. So Henry, can we hopefully that was useful on your part. I know you've heard a lot of that stuff before, but like.
That was useful because I need to apply that to my courses. Yeah.
Can we check in? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I watched Joy's keynote twice. One time in 2 times speed and another time I took a little bit of notes, but that's cool because it was a good example of what it means to do research. Like that was a body of work, right? And the story that she told of the Statue of Liberty, and one part that made me smile was she's like, a lot of people are hitting her up, whether it's through social media or these talks that she goes to. Steve, I don't know if you had a chance to watch that keynote that Jeff forwarded yet. It's the district opening day keynote by a woman who got a PhD in social work.
I don't think I've seen it yet.
It's in our thread. And then what did she say? She's like, I ain't got time for conversations. I'm trying to like save our world, right? So like she ain't got time for Twitter and doing this back and forth. Like if you're serious about this work, get my book and start implementing some of this stuff in your practices. So that is how I feel about when we think of, at least just in the learning code community, what is the thing that's going to move the needle, right? So
did you cry at all?
Yeah, there were moments I got emotional.
Let's say it again.
Yeah, there were definitely moments I got emotional.
I think I cried 4 or 5 times the first time I saw it, and like 8 times the second time I saw it.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, she was talking about the governors that raped women, and then they put them on the. I had to pause it. I was like, just thinking about the reality of that, I couldn't. I want to cry right now. So
watching her speak, yeah, I actually watched Patrick Morris speak during the live graduation. Or were you maybe you caught it afterwards, right, Jeff? Yeah, and that was a good one. So I revisited his speech. Morris is cool. Steve, I timestamped it in our meeting if you want to go to it. Patrick Morris is a math instructor. I don't know if you've had him before.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's cool. Does flip classroom and plays jazz in the background and doesn't use a grading system. But otherwise, I'm doing well, Jeff. I'm still figuring out how to do well in my courses, but little by little, getting there.
Awesome. I'm doing well. We're getting the house together. You guys see the books are up. Finally, I'm going to get another one, I think. I have like, I don't want, the thing that I'm learning is I don't want all of my shelves to be full. So I want all of my shelves to be semi-full so that I can always put a new book in. And I'm running out of room. So 15, I think you guys will have more space sooner than I hope if we do our work well, that you'll have more space sooner than I had. Yeah, otherwise just plugging along.
Are you itching to teach again, Jeff? Because school just started, right, for Foothill.
Yeah, I mean, I miss students. Yeah, I'm not super worried about it. I'd like actually more time to do R&D because I believe students deserve it. But I mean, I miss being in the classroom with students, but everything that I'm doing is for students right now. So it's not, for me, it has to do with time to delivery, right? Like when you go in and you buy an object, the amount of energy that has gone into getting that object on the shelf is super high, right? And the same thing is true for my classes. Like by the time a student sees the material in my class, I want to have spent so much time on it. And so from that standpoint, like, no, I don't really want to go back because the stuff that I want to do in order to be ready for that stage, there's just so much stuff, but it is what it is, right?
It reminds me of two things. Stockman's pledge on the video. He's like, never forward a video if you wouldn't watch this for longer than like 5 seconds. One. And two is that realization that course development does not equal teaching. Because I felt that this summer, like we had that crash course. Steve, you probably felt it too, right? I mean, there were nights where we were in office hours until 9. So that means that student was literally at camp from like 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. just with us, right? How the heck are we going to improve on our practices and our lesson plan when we end our day at 9? And that I mean, Cal talks about this in one of his Deep Questions podcasts, but it's like he got a question from a teacher, and the teacher is basically asking, how the hell do I do deep work when I end school at 3:30 formally, and then I'm tasked with an entire sludge of office administrative tasks, like what a normal office assistant would have, like all those same tasks on top of like starting that at 3:30. There's just like what deep work? How right?
What was his answer to that question?
I think pretty much to have conversations with admin and the people, the policymakers and the people of power at his school, something along those lines. But he was mainly just sympathizing with the dude that it is very hard to do deep work when
Impossible.
It's like that.
Fucking impossible. That's one of the things. When you guys get into that space, you will get there. That's why I wake up at 4 a.m. because and I refuse to, unless I'm like, there have been times during my 4 to 6 a.m. deep work sessions where I will be writing a test because the test is happening at 8. Not now. This was in the first like 2 or 3 years of my career at Foothill. Like as you get your shit together, as I got my shit together, I would get it a few days. So if the test is going to happen tomorrow, like I say, the test is on Wednesday, I usually have the printed version on Monday now. So Tuesday morning, I print it out, I go in and make copies, and I'm done for Wednesday. But like in the first 2 years or 3 years where you can't, it's physically impossible to do it. And that's why it's so, one of the things that I'm hoping as we work together is to have you all front load, because so much of the it's hard to front load curriculum, but it's not hard to front load what I would call the ecosystem of support, student support. Like the curriculum itself for each class, you're gonna have to build every quarter. But if you have a really, really strong network, you know, all the auxiliary stuff in place, the curriculum is just the build, like you just do the build, right? And that's going to be a huge benefit. Imagine if we have a really, really powerful platform, the learning code, that actually walks students through so many of the problems that they're going to face in their education when they're in their classes, and then one of those things pops up and your student's like, what do I do? And you're just like, go read that. Right? Rather than like, so you've seen my mechanism, right, Henry? And you too, Steve. Like, I'll spend an hour and a half with one student working on one problem, and then it's gone forever. Right? So the next student comes, same shit happens, I do it again. Right?
Yeah.
It would be so much better if all of that, if there was a second brain, the student comes with the problem and I'm like, oh, you have this problem? Here, this is a post about it. When you're done reading that post and doing some exercise, let's schedule an appointment and talk about it. So then they go, they read it, come back. Oh, you're done with that? Tell me what you thought. So they tell me what I thought, and they say, oh, there's a second post on the same problem. Go read it, come back, we'll make an appointment, right? So they read it, they come back, we make an appointment, they talk about it, we give some suggestions. Oh, you're still working on it? Here's a third post about that. Oh, and right? So all of a sudden, like, and you guys will be able to do that because I'm having to do this. So if you think about the workflow, when am I solving this problem?
As you're employed full time.
After students are in my fucking class. When are you guys solving this problem?
Well before that day.
Pretty
and we
cool,
don't
right?
have 2 boys.
Yeah. Pretty cool, right?
Mhm.
So talk about, like, this is the gift that keeps on giving. You guys will have this for the rest of your career. So one of the things, so I think, did we get through blog posts and stuff?
The second point on the agenda,
Yeah.
it was, we can have a conversation about that. I think earlier you were hinting about the idea of getting some eyes on it before posting, or just our overall reading and blogging systems. And to just make sure our blog posts on the TLC stays in focus. Like, I'm not so sure the principles that I posted recently is necessarily vocabulary for students to be able to defend themselves against the powers that be. But I also recognize that's only one of our themes, right? One of our goals with our writings. So yeah, I think maybe this is a good time. Steve, what do you think? Should we talk about blogging? Steve sent me a draft of his blog,
Hey, cool.
and we're working on it. I think it's really good, Steve. It's not easy to write, right? Especially when you know that it's going to be public.
Yeah. I'm glad Jeff mentioned that, just me doing the research on what to apply to for these programs and scholarships, like, because I'm sure like me going through it will probably benefit someone in the future also going through it. Even just thinking like, even my younger brother, like I'm sure he'll benefit from this a year from now when he transfers. But your original question, Henry, sorry, I forgot.
Was that, would you be interested in a 10-minute, because we have 10 minutes left in our meeting and we're thinking about whether we either do a 10-minute recording on something, or I think my preference right now is just to talk about our blogging, and what that entails and what that style is
I
like.
think we could talk about the blogs.
So from now on, Henry, you are welcome to make these. On my part, we got to ask Steve and his agent, but on my part, you can make these public.
All right, you can make it public.
From the standpoint of recording, like these are recordings that happen every week, right?
Mhm.
They're not the blog post public, but I think like we're still getting our systems together, and I don't know. I think the recording session, I think we need, I definitely recognize that one of the major goals that I want out of the learning code is the ability to listen to you guys' ideas and then also complement them. Right? Like here we like, or another way to say this is mentorship. To me, to be completely honest with you, I've never been able to mentor students the way that we're working like this. You guys are going to bring stuff that's real for you into this space. And I think I'm hoping that I can help complement those things. Right. And so like, I don't want to lose that in the quest to be productive I don't want to lose that capacity in the quest to like make blog post videos.
Right.
But the fact that we're going to put these videos out there, I'm okay with. Like let's try it. But I think that the mentorship is a higher order than how do I say this? It's a higher priority for me for this type of meeting. And so one thing that I think, so here's, I guess the thing that I would say is the following. I would challenge each of us. I think that for the learning code, what I would like is we post one blog post per week, 52 weeks a year, same day, same time. My preference would be to do it at like on a Friday. Friday at like 5 p.m. or something like that, so that people could read them over the weekend and then start the week with the reminder. Right? Like I've been thinking about that. And then also it gives us an entire week. Like it basically clears that off, right? If we post one a week, my feeling is each of us would be responsible for only one every 3 weeks. Right?
Yeah.
Which ends up to be about 17 posts per year per person. And of course, one thing that I was thinking is we could trade them. So if Henry, let's say that you had like 2 weeks really full of exams and you were like, you know what, like this is where we would need to schedule in advance, right? Like if you're telling me like, oh yeah, Jeff, this Friday is my post and I'm not gonna be able to hit it. Can you get that one for me? Like, okay, then we just don't post anything that week. But if you know that, like if I know that I'm gonna be really busy, like let's say I'm gonna write an engineering 11 exam and I'm supposed to post a blog post next week or 3 weeks from now, and I'm like, Henry or Steve, can someone trade me my September 39th blog post? Because I'm going to be really heavy. I could do one before, I could do one after, but just let's trade, right? But the idea would be, other than those emergency things, like every 3 weeks, basically, we just, and I would think that we could set that schedule at the start of every semester / quarter. Right? So we kind of like sign up for it and renegotiate it. What do you all think about that idea?
That sounds good. I'm also excited to have a short discussion on what our blog post might entail. So I've had some thoughts on it, like should it entail a short story, incorporate some science, and then also tell our readers how to apply this stuff, apply the actual post, or should it be it could literally some might be interviews, right, that I've had with my teachers or some students. So I think if the sooner we can get out the types of blogging that exist out there that we want to model in the TLC, then we can kind of like choose out of those types to focus that week or those 3 weeks of work in development.
Okay, so I just heard research opportunity there. Create a list of blog post genres that we can choose from, so that we don't have to think about which genre we're going to use on a weekly basis. So that was one thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the second thing I heard you say was come up with a strategy, or what you might call like a uniformness, so that when they're reading between 1 or 2 or 3 authors, they're reading the same type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's in there. It would be also cool to challenge each other, since if we have 3 weeks of time for drafting on average, to make sure that our post definitely references to a prior post. Because I think it would be smart to do that. I mean, I see bloggers do it, and it's just keeps us accountable that we are actually understanding what we're all trying to write on our blog,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, maybe one. I mean, I don't think I would link the stuff that was completely irrelevant. But if we have, so one thing that I was thinking is, if I would not, so the way that I would do this is I would actually commit to, so let's say that I take the next, I'm not sure who's going to take the next one, but let's say that I took the next one and I was going to have it ready for Friday of a particular week. I would actually hope to be done with the post by the Friday before, so that you guys could have the weekend, especially if we're going to meet on Mondays or Tuesdays. What would be amazing is, internally, I have the post ready by Friday before. I send it to you guys that night, and I don't know how we do it unlisted, and I say, hey, read this and give me your feedback by the Monday, so that, or whatever our Monday or Tuesday meeting is, right? So you guys both read it, you come up with editorial remarks, and then between that Monday or Tuesday meeting and the next Friday we're gonna post, I take your editorial remarks, touch it up, and then I push publish, right? And so that way, like, it's still a 3-week cycle. It's just the third week of the cycle is always editing and refinement for the next post, right? And then at some point, like, I'm not ready to talk about this today because I do have to cut off pretty much around time. But like, we haven't really talked about editing processes. And I've never really been either of your editor. I tend not to put myself in that position because I'm not trained as an editor. But I do write and read a ton. And you, same thing for you guys. Like, you guys have never really acted as my editor, but I really welcome that. And for the early stages, you're probably going to be in the same space that I was, which is it's not easy to have critiques of somebody's writing when you're not used to thinking about. I really struggled in the early stage of critiquing other people's writing and giving them editorial comments when I wasn't used to thinking about that. But the more that I've written and the more that I read, the more I start to create a style of my own. And then the recognition is each editor has their own style, right? And so it's actually not, this is actually really not an easy thing to do, to become an editor of each other's work, because you got to, like, that's a lot of trust. And so I'm not really ready. Like, I want to put this over the next year. If by a year from now, we have started the editing process and we have a decent trust in each other, that will be a hella productive year. So like, I don't expect within the next few months that any of us are going to have any useful feedback for each other, other than committing to reading our work and keeping ourselves accountable. And I think that's exactly what we need to do in the early stages. Doesn't it make you feel a little nervous that one of us, like, could you imagine, Steve, if you're like, I'm going to commit to it, and then I'm like, hey, Steve, where's your work? And then you're like, oh, I didn't do it.
Oh, yeah.
And the same thing's true. Like, if I tell you guys I'm going to get it done by a Friday and I don't get it done, like, I'm going to have some issues with that, right? So I don't know if I think one thing that we can do is, I owe you guys, I think last week was a pretty good week for me in terms of TLC. I got one blog post, I got like 2 hours of reading on Limitless Mind, and then I got like 40 minutes of reading on YouTube. I still owe you guys a list of YouTube thing for our social media plan. I had meant to get that done by today, but other stuff came up. So I hope to have that done for you next week, a list of questions. We're not going to get answers next questions, but we'll have them. Steve, do you have one in the pocket?
One blog post? Yeah.
Do you want to commit to this Friday or next Friday?
I could commit to this Friday.
Damn it. That's cool. That's awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, okay, so this Friday. And then that would put, do you want, Henry, how are you doing? If I took the Friday after that, or do you want the Friday after that?
I can take up to you, Jeff. You can choose.
Do you have one do you have one in the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I had so many because of our Canvas build for the last, so I have a ton in the pipeline.
Okay. If you do, is it already queued up? You already drafted it and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. So then in that case, why don't you take the one after that, and then I'll take 3 weeks from now. So, and then why don't we try to commit to that schedule? So why don't we schedule the next 2 together, right? And then I'm gonna cut because I got to roll.
Okay.
So what's the dates on those?
Getting them right now.
So Steve's gonna do Friday, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the 25th.
What do you guys think? 6 p.m. Do you have
Six,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, 6 works.
And then Henry's the 2nd.
Correct.
Wait, is there a way for you to like upload it beforehand and it comes out at a specific time, or do you actually have to click the button at 6 p.m.?
I know on YouTube you can do that. You can queue it up.
You're saying that can you schedule it?
Yeah, like a scheduled release.
I believe you can. Can you get an answer to that, Steve? And when we see each other on Monday next week, teach us.
Okay.
I believe you can. Put a time limit on that, like no more than 30 minutes of research.
Yeah.
And you could text us with an answer if you get it, or like if you get an answer, just be like, oh yeah, you could do that. I'll teach you guys on Monday.
Okay.
I don't think I remember a time and date, but I've never actually done it, so I don't know.
Okay.
All right, so it looks like, and then Steve, you'd be the 9th, right?
You would be the 9th.
Oh, I would be the 9th. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. And then Steve would be the 16th, right?
Yeah.
And then Henry the 23rd.
Yes.
And then Jeff the 30th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then why don't we, I think that's good for now, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
If we hit all those, yeah. And then we have some open stuff. So I have a YouTube question list that I'm going to send you guys. I have the next thing that I have to blog about. And then Henry, if you wanted to put together some action items for, sorry, I was
the genres.
Yeah. So sorry, let me ask you this. So for me, I know for sure what I need to do between now and next week. I got the YouTube list, right? And then I have internally I have the blog thing. But one of the things that I was thinking about is the different media for each blog post. Like I think it would be pretty powerful if every blog post had a video, short radio segment or audio segment, and the post itself, right?
Me too.
But I'm not ready to make that commitment yet. And I actually think that writing personally is like 10 times harder than the video and audio.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
If we're not considering cinematography and like tricks to be attention merchants, then yes.
Yeah, and I'm not against. I actually think it's important to do that. But in terms of what you guys, it's like if I had to prioritize for the academic work that you would do in the rest of your undergraduate and PhD, the sooner you guys learn how to write, the better. The cinematography, maybe in 50 to 100 years from now, cinematography is going to be really important, but it's not right now.
Yep.
So what maybe the one thing that each of us can do is come up with a proposal for each blog post. What are the different features that we will commit to as a team? I would like myself to be able to do the post, a video, and audio, but I'm not ready to commit to that. What I can do between now and next week when I see you guys is brainstorm what that looks like in my mind. Maybe both of you can also brainstorm what that looks like in your mind. And then we as a team can decide like what it is that we feel about that.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so I'll do a quick recap on my side. So I owe you guys a list of the thing that I was supposed to finish this week that I didn't. YouTube social media plan, basically. Questions to help us refine that. Start my next blog post that's due on the 9th, and then come up with brainstorms. What does each post represent? The media associated with it. So that's me.
Okay, I am going to reactivate my inactive blog post, the one that I'll be posting on the 2nd of October. I will also begin a brainstorm of the different genres of different types of blog posts for all of us to have. And I will also do some research on what those videos and what those audio clips will look like to supplement my writing.
For me, I've got my calendar for the next 8-9 years. Sounds funny to say. And decide what projects are going to be active and someday maybe. And brainstorm what each post will look like, whether blog, video, or audio. Starting my blog post Friday at 6 p.m. and then find out if there's a way to do the scheduled release on WordPress.
All right. All right, guys.
All right.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff.
Good to see you. See ya. Bye.
Steve,
What's up?
want to stay on for a second?
Can I use the bathroom real quick?
Yeah.
Hold on.